To the Migrant Leaders team for this opportunity to speak with you all today. As you can see on the slide here, I've got quite a bit of detail to get through, hopefully in good time. And I wanted to share my experiences and career to date. And, as Fazal mentioned earlier, certainly welcome any questions as we get to the end of the presentation here. So in terms of my background, my parents grew up in Pakistan, in a fairly remote village. They came over to the UK with very little by way of education or funds. And I was the first member of the family to be born in the UK. So although I'm not myself a migrant as such, certainly had plenty of challenges in terms of that support that I provided from a very young age for my parents in terms of sort of acclimatizing and adjusting to a very different environment than the one that my parents had experienced in their sort of earlier as they were growing up. So at school I was I actually proved to be very academic. I did very, very well, excelled at school, but definitely experienced plenty of poor behaviors from some of the people around me. So there was definitely sort of a sense of racism. I was in a very kind of homogenous type environment, and learned a lot from the people around me, but certainly there were some behaviors which weren't ideal. So lots of different sort of challenges very early on to try to overcome and work through. And when it came to making decisions about education, I opted to take quite a broad range of A levels. I was, as I said, quite broadly academic, so wasn't able really to narrow it down. So I did, science and chemistry. I did maths. I also did English. So quite a sort of eclectic mix there. But certainly, I think deep down, I knew that studying something like law would be really where I wanted to focus my efforts. And I was very fortunate I did get to that opportunity. So I achieved my law degree at university in Essex, and then went on to what was then the College of Law, now the University of Law, in order to achieve and complete the legal practice course, which is a mandatory 1-year course at law school. And I did the corporate pathway there because I realized that was what I really was very, very interested in. It was what I was, scored best in terms of grades and things. It really was something I felt very, very comfortable with and really enjoyed. So moving on then in terms of careers, as you can see from the slide, I'm a chartered company secretary, and I work as a governance professional. And that was what I started my career at. A lot of people working in my field move into it later in their careers. Maybe they start out in law or a related field and then come into governance or chartered company secretary roles later. But I started at EY. I was able to secure a training contract on the graduate program and did complete my training contract there and qualified with the Chartered Governance Institute as a company secretary. And I've just put on here a couple of the logos of some of the firms that I completed secondments or major projects for. So I was at HSBC at their offices in Canary Wharf, working for a period. I also supported on projects with BT, very sort of big, influential, important company for the UK's infrastructure. And then also with Procter & Gamble, I went over to Boston in terms of supporting one of the first sort of large outsourcing contracts that had at that point been ever undertaken from a governance perspective. And so, through that role at EY, I had some incredible experiences working with very high caliber people. And I put on there some of the flags of just a few of the places I visited through my role at EY. I had my first trip to the US with the P&G Procter & Gamble project. And certainly that whole sort of experience of being in a very, very different world than the one I sort of grown up with, and literally miles away from what my parents had experienced. It was really literally like being, in a different world, a different planet in many respects. So I'd been at EY, I'd qualified, I did decide to move in-house, and that was very much because I really enjoy the delivery of work in terms of when you're in a professional services firm like EY, as you move up the ranks, often you're more focused around looking after clients and improving, developing sort of sales of business, and less to do with the actual delivery of the work itself. And so moving in-house gave me that opportunity. And as you can see, I've worked for a number of different companies through my career. Each of them were progressive and new opportunities building on my experience that I had gained to date, all multinational or FTSE 100 companies. So really gained lots of new experience. And each time I moved, I was able to expand my network of people that I knew in the industry. And I've just built on that, year on year, job to job and company to company, which I think is really important for anybody in any field, really. And then more recently, I moved on to more senior roles at Tesco, Balfour Beatty, in my current role that I have at BP. And so, in more recent years, I've been very fortunate to have some fantastic opportunities. I've just, again, put a few pictures on here, but you can see at the bottom right-hand corner, that's a picture of me doing my offshore training, which working in the oil and gas sector is really is mandatory for anybody that works offshore at an oil rig or any other offshore facility. And the training there involves being put in, well, it involves a lot of things, but one of the key things is being put into a simulator helicopter and then put upside down in a swimming pool and having to break open the window and swim out to safety without any breathing equipment. And you have to do that 6 times. So, but the reason I put it on there and the reason I flagged it is because, working in all these different industries and all these different sectors, the work I do, I'm sitting in an office, I'm in meetings, I'm on calls, actually I can't be as effective in my role unless I understand the business and I understand what people delivering at the front line experience. And so doing the offshore training gave me a bit of an insight into that. Similarly, over the years, I've done many other things relating to the different roles at Whitbread, which owns the Costa Coffee brand, visited and toured the Costa roastery where all of the beans are roasted, and been to various building sites when I was at Balfour Beatty. So lots of different things like that. And I've also, through the experience I've gained, been very lucky to be invited to speak at various events, both in the UK and internationally. And again, just put a couple of pictures on there as well. And then I've been able to secure some awards as well. Again, just sort of flagged some of those on the screen here. I mean, in terms of what I've learned, I would very much flag to say that it's really important, I think, regardless of where you are in your career, whether it's at the start or later on, that you really should really spend some time to make sure you understand and know yourself. And what I mean by that is to understand and identify your personal values and use those as an anchor for whatever challenges or difficulties or opportunities and positive moments that you might find yourself. Having that anchor of understanding who you are and what your values are, what you stand for, will really help you in any situation and help to support your authenticity and therefore your ability to build really meaningful relationships. I think also I put on there on the screen about running your own race. And what I mean by that is the fact that, you should use other people's achievements as inspiration to pursue and to, increase your ambition and to, try to achieve maybe what they've achieved or for that to take you in a particular direction. Do not use it, I would say, for comparison. I think that that's a real killer. If you're comparing yourself to other people, don't be too rigid in your thinking oh, somebody else has achieved this. Be ready to make the most of the opportunities that come your way, even if you weren't expecting them, and really compare yourself to where you were rather than other people. I've also put on here meerkat, eagle, chameleon, and you might think, what on earth does that relate to? But I think in terms of meerkat, I would say that channeling your inner meerkat is important, because if you keep your head down and you work really, 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 really hard and hope that one day somebody's going to notice you, then you're probably not going to get very far in life. Being a meerkat is about keeping your head up, looking around, seeing what's around you, building relationships with people around you that might not be the people that you're in your immediate sphere that you're working with. So I think that's really important. But then also, you do have to be an eagle, laser focus. An eagle soars high up in the sky, and they're looking down for their prey, laser focus on that prey. They'll dive down some distance down to get that prey. You've got to have an ability to be focused on the things that you are working on at that point in time, rather than flip-flopping around too much and getting distracted. And then also a chameleon, I think, also, especially given the background that I've had, and that I know many people on the call today have had, in some variation. Being a chameleon is about being able to adapt and fit in to the environment around you. But if you've got the values as your anchor, you won't lose a sense of identity and sense of who you are and what you stand for. So being a chameleon, being adaptable, and being able to blend into different environments, different people you may meet, different people you need to work with, and building those authentic relationships whilst being true to yourself is really important. Otherwise, again, you are at some point going to find yourself in an unsustainable situation. And then just quickly, because I know we're sort of short on time, I've just put on there, learn to truly value feedback. I think the biggest accelerator for anybody's career is to be able to take feedback and to gain the value of it. It's very raw and difficult sometimes to get feedback that you don't like listening to, but actually the more you can learn and understand about why somebody is saying something to you that they've said, and actually understand how can it help you versus something that's going to hold you back, is really important. And then broaden your horizons. Don't be limited by what the people around you, or the people from your community, or the people that have gone before you or have had similar experiences to you. Don't be limited by what they've achieved. Actually think to yourself, what can I do bigger, better, greater than they can? And, you don't need to create like that in a negative sense of just always chasing an unachievable dream, but be inspired by the people around you, but don't let it limit your thinking. Actually think about how you can extend that and go further. So with that in mind, I will leave it there and just pass back to Fawzia.
Thank you so much, Alia. That was really fascinating. And I'm really pleased that you made the last comment about not being limited by what's gone before you.